The birth of Jesus was a moment of unparalleled joy and divine fulfillment, but it also marked the beginning of a journey fraught with danger and uncertainty. Shortly after his birth, the safety of the Christ child was threatened by the jealousy and paranoia of King Herod, a ruler desperate to maintain his grip on power. Herod, having heard from the wise men about the birth of the King of the Jews, saw this as a direct threat to his throne and devised a plan to eliminate the child. Matthew chapter 2, 13-14 recounts a pivotal moment. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night and left for Egypt. This divine warning, delivered through an angel, underscores God's sovereignty and his commitment to protecting his son. Joseph's immediate obedience to the angel's command is a testament to his unwavering faith and trust in God. He did not hesitate or question the message. Instead, he acted swiftly to ensure the safety of his family. The journey to Egypt was long and perilous, requiring Joseph to navigate unfamiliar terrain and rely on God's provision at every step. This act of faith illustrates Joseph's role as a protector and provider, chosen by God to care for the Savior of the world. This episode highlights the stark contrast between human schemes and divine plans. Herod's attempt to thwart God's purposes through violence and fear was ultimately futile. Psalm chapter 33, 10-11 declares, "The Lord foils the plans of the nations, he thwarts the purposes of the peoples. But the plans of the Lord stand firm forever, the purposes of his heart through all generations." Herod's cruelty could not overcome God's sovereign will, and Jesus' mission of redemption continued unabated. The flight to Egypt also fulfilled a significant prophecy. Matthew chapter 2, 15 notes, "And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, 'Out of Egypt I called my son.'" This reference to Hosea chapter 11:1 ties Jesus' story to the history of Israel, drawing a parallel between the nation's exodus from Egypt and the Messiah's journey. Just as God delivered Israel from bondage, Jesus would lead humanity out of the bondage of sin, establishing a new covenant of freedom and grace. The divine warning and Joseph's obedience remind us that God is always at work, even in the midst of danger and uncertainty. His protection extends to those who trust in him, guiding them through trials and preserving his purposes. The flight to Egypt is a powerful example of God's faithfulness, demonstrating that no force on earth can thwart his plans. The journey to Egypt was both a physical and spiritual test for Joseph, Mary, and the infant Jesus. The distance from Bethlehem to Egypt was significant, requiring endurance, courage, and faith. This young family, carrying the Savior of the world, was now refugees in a foreign land. They entered Egypt, a place with its own historical significance in the story of God's people. As both a land of refuge and a land of bondage, Egypt had served as a place of protection for God's people before. In Genesis, Joseph, the son of Jacob, found favor in Egypt, ultimately bringing his family there during a time of famine. Centuries later, the nation of Israel was enslaved in Egypt, only to be delivered by God's mighty hand through Moses. Now, Egypt once again became a sanctuary, this time for the Messiah himself. Matthew chapter 2, 15 connects this episode to the prophecy in Hosea chapter 11:1, "Out of Egypt I called my son." This fulfillment not only affirmed God's control over history but also linked Jesus' life to the broader narrative of redemption. Just as Israel's exodus from Egypt marked the deliverance from physical slavery, Jesus' eventual return from Egypt symbolized humanity's deliverance from the spiritual slavery of sin. While in Egypt, Joseph and Mary likely lived in humble circumstances, relying on their faith and God's provision. They would have had to navigate the challenges of being outsiders in a foreign land, adapting to new customs, languages, and ways of life. Yet, they trusted that God's hand was guiding and sustaining them. Isaiah chapter 41:10 offers words of comfort that may have resonated in their hearts. "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." This period of refuge also underscores the humanity of Jesus and his family. Though he was the Son of God, Jesus entered fully into the human experience, including the vulnerability and dependence of infancy. His family's time as refugees reminds us that God is intimately familiar with the struggles of his people. Hebrews chapter 4:15 declares, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin." The refuge in Egypt serves as a reminder of God's care and provision, even in the most challenging circumstances. Just as he guided Joseph and Mary, he promises to guide us through our own trials. Psalm chapter 46:1 reassures us, "God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble." The faithfulness of God, demonstrated in his protection of the Christ child, is a source of hope and encouragement for all who trust in him. The time in Egypt was not permanent, but it was a necessary season. It provided safety from Herod's wrath and fulfilled God's prophetic plan. It also demonstrated the importance of trusting in God's timing. Joseph and Mary had to wait for the angel's next instruction, relying on God's wisdom rather than their own understanding. Proverbs chapter 3:5-6 encapsulates this trust. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." Through their obedience and faith, Joseph and Mary played a critical role in protecting the Savior, allowing God's plan of redemption to unfold. The journey challenges us to consider how we respond to God's leading, especially when it requires stepping into the unknown. After an undisclosed period of time in Egypt, the next chapter of God's plan for the Christ child began to unfold. Matthew chapter 2:19-20 recounts, after Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." This divine instruction marked the end of their time as refugees and the beginning of their return to Israel, fulfilling yet another step in God's redemptive plan. Joseph's obedience to God's guidance remained unwavering. Just as he had responded promptly to the angel's earlier command to flee to Egypt, he now rose and began the journey back to Israel. His faith and trust in God's direction demonstrate his deep commitment to his role as protector and provider for Mary and Jesus. This return journey, however, was not without its challenges. Matthew chapter 2:22 reveals that Joseph received another warning in a dream. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. Archelaus, like his father Herod, was known for his cruelty, and the angel's guidance led Joseph to settle in Nazareth, a small town in Galilee. This relocation fulfilled yet another prophecy, so was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene, Matthew chapter 2:23. The return to Israel and the settlement in Nazareth symbolize both the faithfulness of God and the faithfulness of his people. God orchestrated every detail, from the warnings delivered by angels to the fulfillment of prophecies, ensuring that his plan for salvation would continue unimpeded. Meanwhile, Joseph and Mary displayed steadfast obedience, trusting God's provision and protection at every turn. Nazareth became the place where Jesus would grow and live out his early years. It was in this humble town that the Son of God would experience the ordinary aspects of human life, working alongside Joseph, learning the rhythms of daily life, and growing in wisdom and stature. Luke chapter 2:40 provides insight into this period. "And the child grew and became strong, he was filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was on him." The ordinary nature of Jesus' upbringing highlights the profound truth of the Incarnation, that God became fully human, dwelling among us in the most relatable of circumstances. The return to Nazareth also carried symbolic significance. Nazareth was an unassuming town, often regarded with contempt, as reflected in Nathanael's question in John chapter 1:46, "Nazareth, can anything good come from there?" Yet, it was from this place of humility that the Savior would emerge, exemplifying God's tendency to work through the unexpected and the overlooked. This truth is echoed in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, 27-29. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things, and the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. The story of Jesus' early years, from the flight to Egypt to the settlement in Nazareth, reflects God's meticulous care and sovereignty. Each step fulfilled prophecy, revealed his faithfulness, and prepared the way for the Messiah's mission. It also serves as a powerful reminder of his protection in times of uncertainty. For believers today, this story offers both comfort and challenge. It assures us that God is with us in every season, guiding and protecting us even when the path is unclear. It also calls us to live with the same trust and obedience demonstrated by Joseph and Mary, stepping forward in faith as God unfolds his plan. The early years of Jesus' life, marked by danger and divine protection, remind us that God's purposes are never thwarted. His light shines even in the darkest circumstances, and his love sustains those who trust in him. As we reflect on this story, may we be encouraged to place our faith in the God who leads us, protects us, and fulfills his promises. For just as he guided Joseph and Mary, he is faithful to guide us in every step of our journey.